Welcome back to Movie Reel. I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
And I'm Kevin Tracy. Welcome back to Marvel Month. We're still in phase one right now. We're continuing on
And
with
and
that
we're
with we're just jumping right into the next one with Thor, which came out in 2011. We're just skipping the Incredible Hulk.
Does that even I remember I was rewatching everything before Endgame, and I was like texting people, I'm like, do I need to watch Hulk? Like, other than the scene of other than the scene of Tony Stark in, like, was it the end credits? Like, it doesn't seem to have much tie to anything else.
The only major connection is the general in that, like General Ross is the guy in like Civil War who's like keeps pushing the Sokovia Accords. He's playing the same character, but he's like Director Ross now, I believe. It's the same character and it's the same actor, and it took me a while to fully realize that because I haven't seen the Incredible Hulk in forever. Same with everyone else. No one really talks about that movie, and I don't think it's just because it was Edward Norton playing Bruce Banner instead of a Mark Ruffalo. Um, I don't know. It just feels like the Hulk movies kind of get a bad rap. I mean, the Ang Lee one in like 2003, I can understand that one was kind of weird, but the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, which was technically a part of Phase One, not that bad. It's kind of generic and by the numbers, even by Marvel
Yeah.
standards, but it was still pretty good. And it's also
Yeah.
one of like the few ones where like the bad guy just doesn't immediately die at the end of the movie, which
I
seems to
mean,
be a common trend
yeah.
for most of the Marvel movies.
I was thinking about that for this movie. I'm like, Loki doesn't die, and then I'm like, oh yeah, we think he's dead. We at the end of every single one of these movies, I think except Ragnarok, we think he's dead.
Yeah, pretty much. He
And
he he has
so
a
I guess
habit
in
of
two of
just
them,
doing that.
yeah. Yeah. So let's get into what's the movie that you're always comparing this to? And you're correct.
Uh, yeah, this movie. If you haven't seen this movie in a while and you kind of don't really want to watch like like a Marvel action movie, just put on Cars instead with Owen Wilson, and it is pretty much like dot for dot the exact same movie, like
It
plot point
is.
wise. Even like the antagonist is very similar. He's just like so let me kind of like break this down for you if you guys kind of don't really know what I'm talking about. The main premise of the movie, and this can apply to either one, is a egotistical jerk who is so full of himself, thinks he is God's gift to the world, and in one case he kind of is because he's the son of a god. Um,
Ah. Yeah.
thinks that they can do no wrong and tries to prove themselves to the point where only bad things can happen, and eventually it does. They get stuck in the middle of some podunk out in the middle of nowhere desert like town in rural United States. They have to come to grips that they are not the center of the universe, that not everything revolves around them, and they have to learn humility through the people there. They then fall in love with a woman in that town, and then they have to use their newfound morality and compassion to win the day against their green antagonistic frenemy or whatever. But yeah, they are the exact same movie.
I, I I just remembered you first said that, and I was like, "You're not wrong. That's a really good comparison. They are
I
pretty much the
remember
same
hearing
movie."
yeah, I remember hearing that like comparison a long time ago, like when Thor was like maybe like a couple years old. Um, it's it kind of blows my mind that this movie's 10 years old. This came out in
Oh yeah, I
2011.
know.
Um, I don't even remember if I saw this in theaters. I don't think I did. I think I missed this and Thor 2 in theaters, and I got lucky and saw this like on like TV before I saw Avengers. Like I had a general idea of like Thor like a little bit through like my dad, my grandpa, and like the comics that they had. Um,
Hmm.
but I didn't really know like Heimdall and the War with the Frost Giants. Like what my introduction was like him fighting these like rock monster aliens like Korg, like
Yeah.
like he was fighting a bunch of those like on Earth, and apparently like that's a very like famous story for Thor. But yeah, I didn't really know much about the just general like Norse mythology, so I didn't really know a lot of these like key characters. So I was kind of lost, but at the same time very much intrigued by what was going on because like, oh, this sounds believable. Oh yeah, that's actually just a part of like Norse mythology. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I believe this was like the first MCU movie I saw. I think it was the year. It was like the summer before, but it was like the year that Avengers was coming out, and I this was, I remember, I this and Iron Man 2 were on Netflix. And at the time I'm like, I really wanted to watch, I just
Yeah,
remember I really wanted to watch Iron Man, but I had no way to watch it, and so I was gonna watch Iron Man 2. She's like, my sister's like, no, just please, just begging me not to. um, but this was, yeah, I think
smart.
one of the very first ones I saw, and it's kind of just funny. I It's been a couple years since I've seen Dark World, and I I I might have said this last time. I just remember when Ragnarok came out, everybody was saying it's so great, it's the best one, like, and just like bringing it up, and then everyone was just been shitting on Dark World since it came out. And then when I finally got around to watching both of them, I actually am like, I get why people prefer Ragnarok, but I actually kind of like Dark World better. And this movie, I think, is,
I mean, I definitely like.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely like Dark World over this one. This one I feel like is kind of the weaker of the three.
that's what, yeah, and that's what I was thinking while watching it. I'm like, it's not, it's definitely not bad. I think it is pretty solid. I just think it is, out of all of them, it is the weakest one. It's There's a lot of really great things about it, but I realize I think this movie kind of falls victim to the problem of, as the audience, there's no twist. We know from pretty early on Loki is going to be the bad guy. So we're just watching
Yeah,
everything unfold, and we're not seeing the scenes or the moments where the characters are piecing it together. So like later, so Loki visits Thor and says, Odin's dead and like it's all your fault. And later when his friends show up,
yeah, and which
yeah,
is like a total lie. Yeah,
and his friends show up later, and he's like, I can't go back because my dad died and I have to stay in exile. And they're like, what? No, your dad's alive. And then in like a minute, a few minutes later, he's like, okay, you guys do this and I'll stop Loki. And I'm like, so, I mean, I get that, yes, it does make sense that you would come to the conclusion that it's Loki, but I didn't, that it just seems like a weird, not an illogical jump, just why couldn't we see that moment? But it's like I said, it's one of those, it's that situation of the audience sees the whole thing unraveling, so we're
yeah,
not we're not figuring things out at the same time the characters are, so they're just not showing that moment. And I was like, there were a couple of those, and it wasn't unbelievable, it wasn't illogical, it was just like, I just felt like something was missing to make it stronger.
and it's also kind of odd that they didn't make the jump to the conclusion that like Loki's up to something, especially when we've had like 10 years worth of movies where like Thor's talking about like all these interactions that he's had with Loki with like other like characters. And I remember at one point in Ragnarok, he's like talking to like Valkyrie and Bruce Banner and saying like, "Oh yeah, like I remember he turned into a snake because he knew I really liked snakes. So I went and picked up to admire the snake, and then he turned back and into himself to scare me, and then he stabbed me. We were 8 at the time. It's like, how do you not suspect someone to to do something like this when they stabbed you as you were a
And
child?
also, but Loki,
And then there were like
yeah,
other
Loki
instances,
in the
like yeah,
very beginning is
like
I mean, and that's yeah. I mean,
shifty.
also just in the very first few scenes, it comes off. He's definitely shifty, but it comes off very like he's very docile, and uh he's the grounded one, and Thor is like the arrogant one, and obviously
He's
the yeah
yeah. Loki's definitely the brains, and Thor's
the
definitely the
second
brawn.
like he's saying like I don't I think you're right. I think we should go to the Frost Giants because who says they're gonna come back? And it's like, and after seeing the movie, it's like, oh, he's just. I mean, even maybe there, like it's just he's just planting the seed of getting him to get in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
Um, but it was also kind of cool seeing like some of the various like plot plot devices that would make much more of a greater impact, like the Bifrost and like Heimdall. Like Heimdall, I feel like had such a minor role in this movie, even though he's such an important character. And like later on in the movies, I mean, it's Idris Elba, and he's like barely used in this movie at all.
yeah,
And he is like a top-notch, phenomenal actor. And he has like maybe like 5 scenes and like 10 lines of dialogue
yeah. And
tops.
I was thinking
Um,
that I was
which is
thinking the
kind of a
same thing with
shame.
Natalie Portman. I like her character a lot. I really like her in this movie. But I did think I do. I was thinking I do
Yeah,
appreciate that she is going to be like the like Lady Thor, the female version of Thor in Love and Thunder, because
yeah,
she's Natalie Portman. She's kind of, I think, too good to be just the like the love interest. Yeah,
the damsel.
and I again like I think she's a really fun character. She's like very passionate. She's a nerd. She's like she's like the she's also like the brains of her operation. Like I I
Oh, one hundred
think she's a
percent.
really great character, so I'm not like crapping on it for her being like the love interest because she is a solid love interest. I just think like she is like Natalie Portman. It is at the root of it a love interest. So she is more than that. So I am kind of glad that she she evolves in the next one as well as in, going to be in Thor 4. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's also kind of fun seeing like the dynamic between her and Skarsgård and
Kat
Kat Dennings. They
Dennings.
they just have like I think I
Darcy
love
is.
Kat Dennings in this, and I love her, and I love her in One
Can there
Division
just
as
be
well.
another show
Um,
of Darcy, Wu, and Monica Rambeau? Unless there's already plans
yes,
for one.
please. I have no idea, but just their core dynamic of like Skarsgård as kind of like a paternal like father figure to the group, Darcy kind of being like the grounded kind of stubborn uh uh but like level-headed one of the group, and Kat Dennings just being like the teenager that doesn't know what they're doing, even though it's like, wait, why did you apply for this job? It's like I needed the intern credits, and then she becomes a
Yeah,
doctor. It's like that's great. She there's I was so surprised to see that she's in it. It's like she's a doctor now. It's like,
I was
oh, that's
thinking that
great.
because I remember she showed up in WandaVision, and I was like, wait, wasn't she like not the joke there is that she's completely like unqualified, but she was the only applicant, and
Yeah,
and here she says like, yeah, I'm not a science major, I'm a political science major, and then in WandaVision she's like, I mean, she's had her has she's a doctor. She has at least her doctorate. That is several years. I mean, she was in college, I guess, at the time. So the time frame, but like, and she's
yeah,
clearly really good at what she does because the second she shows up, they find out that, oh wow, it's like broadcasting from inside. I don't see how anybody else could not have figured that out though. But regardless, that's a whole nother thing. But
yeah.
but um
Who knows?
But Skarsgård is, I mean, he's uh Bill Skarsgård. He's not Bill Skarsgård. That's the other one. What
It,
Alexander's the other one?
it's
What's it?
it's
Stellan. I almost said
Stellan
Stefan. Like I
Skarsgård.
thought Stefan. Stellan. Yes.
It's not Stefan.
There is. Well, isn't there? Yeah, there is a Stefan. I think
I
maybe
don't
there's so
know.
many. I know there's a Gustav.
There's so there's just Skarsgård just crawling out of the walls at this point. They're everywhere. They're multiplying like crazy.
They're a big family, and like many of them are actors. But anyway, he
Yeah.
okay. So he's in real life. He's Swedish, and I was just getting like so. This was another slight issue I was having where I felt like things were happening a little too coincidentally. Like he is saying like, "Oh no, this guy's crazy." He's talked about the Bifrost and the Frost Giants and Odin. These are stories I heard from when I was a kid. It's like, oh, how convenient that somebody is aware of like this mythology, which I don't think really did
I mean,
anything other than. But then he's in the library and he sees like the kids' book of this information, and I
yeah.
wasn't against both of those things. It just seemed a little too coincidental.
I mean, to be fair, like I was like really into Greek mythology as a
Yeah.
kid, and I do remember like a lot of those stories and like a lot of like Egyptian like I was
Right.
aware of like some of like Norse mythology, so it's not like that big of a stretch. Like I do remember like going to the library as a kid and getting a children's book of like the 12 labors of Hercules and like reading like there was like a condensed version of the story of the Odyssey that was written by the same author who did the Magic Treehouse
What?
books, and she condensed it into like yeah no she and
Oh.
I think it was like Mary. It was like Mary Osborne. I think was
Yeah.
the author. I could be
Yeah.
completely wrong. I just remember the last name was Osborne, and she condensed the Odyssey into like 7 or like 9 short stories of like several labors. Like, oh, here's him like first leaving the island and encountering the island of the Cyclops, which is like the son of Poseidon, and tricking him and blinding him, and getting stuck on Cersei's island and his men being turned into animals, and of him finally getting back to Ithaca but being turned into an old man and having to prove to his wife and son like it was like a whole thing. But it's like I remember that very vividly, even though I have not read those stories in decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have not. I probably haven't like read those stories since I was in like maybe third or
Yeah.
fourth grade. But I remember those very vividly. But so it's like it's not that like yeah, it is kind of a stretch that is like inconvenient that he just
That's
happens to know
right.
all this stuff about
Right.
Norse mythology. But yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. But it's not that big of a stretch because like I mean I know all this useless stuff about Greek mythology.
Yeah, then I see where you're coming from. That is yeah, and it's not again, it's not, and that's why that was something I noticed throughout this movie was just there were a lot of just those. It's not a stretch for them to figure this out, but it's like that missing little detail that makes it like it's believable, but like so that was my issue with it. But actually, it surprises me. There's not in Marvel, so we have Thor, who is of Norse mythology. Isn't there Moon Knight that's
Yeah.
coming to Disney Plus, and that's like based on like it's someone who has powers from like an Egyptian god. I'm surprised there isn't one of Greek mythology. That one
I
sounds
th-
awesome, and I'm really pumped for that. But I'm surprised there isn't one based in Greek.
Well, I do remember like an old interview with Stan Lee kind of addressing that why he decided to make Thor, because at the time there were like a lot of like very popular like Greek mythology was like very popular, like everyone knew like Hercules, Zeus, like all of that, and there were several comics of like Greek characters. Sorry. um and in DC Comics, they kind of integrated Greek mythology into Wonder Woman's mythos with like the
Oh yeah.
Amazons, and there's like some like versions where she's like the daughter of either Ares or Hades. I don't remember which, but there's like some interpretations where she's like literally the daughter of a god, um, which is why she's as powerful as she is, and her interacting with several gods and other like members of like that entire mythos. Um, so I remember Stanley saying that he wanted to kind of stray away from the norm because he didn't want it to just kind of be lost in like obscurity or any other uh, uh, potential copyright infringement. Is like, oh no, like DC did this first, like you're just clearly copying. This is clearly a rep off, and so he decided to go with like another like public domain mythos that he could kind of expand upon, and he chose Thor because no one really did that much with Norse mythology. Um, and I guess the rest is history from that point. He clearly made the
That
best
makes
decision.
okay. That makes sense because yeah, like people know less about Norse mythology and Egyptian. It's I feel like Egypt's kind of that weird like everyone's very familiar with Greek mythology. Like even if you're not into it, everybody is has
Yeah,
somewhat of a uh like a foundation base of it. But like little
yeah. Even if it's just like through like the
exactly.
Hercules movie, you at least have like you at least know like the key names
And
in
Egypt's
that mythos.
like slightly less like I don't really know myths. I know more like I know some names of gods, but I'm not like it's not a forte.
I
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I know like Ra and Anubis and Bast and like a couple other gods here and there. I couldn't tell you what some of them are the gods
Bast
of,
is the
but
cat
yeah,
goddess.
that's pretty much it. I yes, and I think they're the god of the moon.
May-
I think they're like the lunar god, or maybe that's
oh no,
Thoth.
Thoth is
I don't remember.
knowledge.
Thoth is knowledge. Okay, he's the hawk.
That
No,
is
that's Ra.
anyway. But yeah,
Anyway,
anyway,
we're getting off topic.
but yeah, I think if like let's say they did go down the path of like doing Greek mythology, it would have to be a very minor god for it to work. I think yeah, choosing Nordic is again makes more sense because people are less familiar with it. But if they were gonna go the Greek way, it would have had to have been like something super minor. Whereas Thor is a major god in Nordic mythology. Yet again, like he had, but
In North, yeah, he's like yeah, he's like one of like the big three that everyone knows about is Odin, Loki, and Thor. Like there's a couple other ones, and I genuinely don't remember a lot of the other
I just
Norse
know what is in
gods
Thor. That is
outside of those
it.
three.
And Thor, sorry, you go.
Like I like I part of me thinks that the Thor's group of friends, I forget what he calls the group. It's like there's like Lady Civ, there's like Fandral, and oh god, what were not Heimdall. It was like it started with like, is it Volstagg?
The
I don't know, but I think that like they were like minor gods in like the Norse mythos, and that like that's and since like they're always like hanging out with like Thor and like Loki and all of that, that's why they were like worshipped as minor gods. Like I honestly don't remember because I know so little about Norse mythology. I might just be totally making this up, but I also thought it was really funny between Thor 1, 2, and like 3 when we see like his group of friends, the casting changes of a couple of them is so funny to me because they're such minor characters that I genuinely didn't realize that they were casted differently until someone pointed it out, because I've seen Thor 1 and 2 like maybe like once or twice prior to recording
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Um it was just really funny. It's just like, oh yeah, that's the dude from
yeah.
Chuck.
It's
That's
Zachary
Chuck.
Levi,
He's playing
yeah.
he's playing
And then
yeah,
in
yeah,
this one,
Zachary
it's
Levi.
Josh
Or,
Dallas
yeah.
who couldn't reprise his role because he went on to be Prince Charming in Once Upon a Time. And I thought that was hilarious that they replaced him with Zachary Levi, who is the voice of a, air quotes, Disney prince. And so I'm like, crisscross. Yeah, no, yeah, it's just, they're replaced for a second and then they die. So it's not even, yeah.
Yeah, it was just really funny that it's like it was just really funny. It's like you guys can just find like a lookalike or something like real quick. Like they're not even like important to the second
Yeah.
and third story.
Yeah.
I just thought that was really funny, and it makes me laugh now looking back at it. It's like, how did I not notice this? It's like, oh right, they do jack shit in
Well,
this
this
movie. No wonder
one
I didn't
they're
notice.
more relevant. The next one, no.
Well,
Oh, in
yeah,
Dark
this one
World.
they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking like Dark World. They're in like
Yeah.
2 scenes total, and like 3 minutes of Thor Ragnarok where they all get
Oh, I thought they got
killed.
killed. Oh no, it is Ragnarok. I
Uh,
thought it was Dark World for some reason.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Hela and all of her. I don't even think the Draugr show up. I think just Hela just shows up and kills
So
them all.
I think this entire. I was thinking about this. To me, Thor is like Guardians of the Galaxy in the sense of there is so much more going on and so many different types of characters and types of characters like that I find it almost like it's like you're getting so much information. It's not hard to follow the story. It's just remembering all these names, remembering
No,
like so Thor and like Guardians are actually very basic like stories, but like the world is just so complicated. But yeah.
it is. Yeah, I honestly like appreciate what this movie did for the rest of the MCU and Guardians. Although I think Guardians kind of did this story a bit better, but I think that's mainly because they've had a lot of time and other movies under their belt to kind of work out a formula that kind of works out a bit more. But it's it's a very, like you said, it's a very basic, pretty easy to understand story, but it just expands the entire universe in a way that you weren't expecting it to. Of like, oh, you think it's like another plane of existence? Like, no, it's technically like another
Yeah, I was
planet.
gonna ask
It's
that. Like,
like they're like technically aliens from another planet that just age extremely slowly, which is why humans like perceive them as like immortal gods. Um, and it's just really cool how even though like it's something like as weird as a Valhalla themed alien planet exists in the same world as a talking tree that only knows 3 words is like it seems so bizarre when you say things like out of context like that, but because of these movies and how they lay out the groundwork, they make it seem as plausible as possible, regardless of how ridiculous the creatures or the names or general locations everything might be. And I just think that's one of the reasons why the MCU is as popular as it is because of how well connected and how well explained and detailed the universe is. Just like Star Wars and how like intricate that is, of like how everything kind of interacts with everything, and how every even like the most minor characters have like these crazy stories that you want to get fall into and read about for hours
yeah,
on end.
it this movie. So yeah, this movie and Iron Man and Captain America, they do like very beautifully lay out the groundwork for everything that's to come. And Thor, I mean, we've been talking kind of about how there are like minor issues, nothing like major that I consider it problematic. But this is it's directed by Kenneth Branagh, and this is I think a very beautiful movie, like visually. I think Asgard looks incredible. I think uh I love the
Oh yeah,
town. I love just the general like vibe and feel of the movie. It it does have that heroic aspect, but I think because of the setting, it's set in this middle of nowhere town. There is some and where like obviously it makes sense because like that's where like the Bifrost. That's where like he lands and there's that uh mythical
yeah.
connection and it's just like open skies. There is something very beautiful about the whole thing. But I when I was watching it, I was kind of like, holy shit, Asgard. and like the that like path between like Asgard and like where the not the it's not the Bifrost, or is it? It's like before they get to what's his name? Yeah, the Rainbow
Oh, the
Bridge.
the Rainbow
Yeah,
Bridge,
it's like
Heimdall.
it's all just very beautiful
Yeah,
and very visually appealing.
yeah, yeah. It's like glittering and it like ripples out like there's like water underneath the surface. Like
Yeah,
every time someone like walks on it, I thought that was like a really cool effect. It has like this shimmery, almost watery effect as they're walking on this like
yeah.
almost like crystal like surface.
It's yeah, and it's and even the design for like the what's the frost giant planet called again?
It's like a
Okay, yeah,
different like plane. It's like
I yeah, yeah.
I yeah they I, all the names kind of blur together because there's like Midgard, which is Earth. There's Asgard, which is Asgard. Then there's like the plan for like the fire giants, the frost giants. There's like the dark elves, which is like we isn't explained until like the second movie. Um, oh God, I genuinely don't
But
remember
yeah,
now. It's
yeah, yeah,
something that
yeah.
ends with guard.
Um,
I'm assuming.
and so like actually, so there's quickly jump into the movie. Thor is about to be crowned king, and just as he's about to be crowned king, the some of the frost giants break in and try to steal the what do you yes, it's that's
the
right. I don't
the
even it's
Tesseract.
yeah, and they
It's
fail,
basically
and
yeah.
Thor's like, "We'll go fight them," and Odin's like, "No, you're just seeking war for the hell of it." And Loki plants the seed of like, "You're right, like we totally should," and no, we shouldn't. So they all go there and cause a bunch of trouble. It's kind of like it's like that scene in Lion King where Simba and Nala are you know just because you're brave doesn't just because you're
They want to
brave
go to
doesn't mean you go
the
looking for
elephant
trouble.
graveyard.
It's basically that same scene. um but this I was thinking about this whole movie. So we find out that Loki is a frost giant technically, and he Odin found him as a baby and
Yeah.
kind of thought, oh, maybe our worlds could be united through Loki. And so he figures this out when he goes to the like realm, and one of the frost giants grabs him and his skin just starts to turn blue. And then like he touches the Tesseract when he gets back to Asgard and the same thing happens. And I'm more just confused, is it what makes him not look like the other frost giants? Is it they're all I was just getting so mixed up. I'm like, is it the
um.
whole them stealing the Tesseract is what makes them look this way? Is it like warmth? Like
No, I think he looks the way he does is it's explained. Well, it's not really explained why he looks human or as guardian. I think it's implied that since his mom is a witch and he is like a master of like magic and all kinds of like visual trickery and all that, is that his mom placed like an enchantment or some kind of spell on him to make him look the way he does. And I'm sure that Loki at some point has like either like dropped this illusion unintentionally and has looked like a frost giant to like either like freak out his friends or Thor or something like that, and just assumed this wasn't uh like and just assumed that was like an illusion that he put up and then reapplied the illusion that his mother put on to make himself look like he thinks that he normally looks like, to make himself look like Loki instead of a frost giant. um, I just think it was just some kind of like weird mind game like that his mother and father put on him. It's like, this is what you look like. If you look at anything else, you have the ability to change yourself to make yourself look back to how you are when you were born. Um, and I really wish that they had some kind of scene or some kind of like bit of dialogue that kind of
mhm.
confirms that theory that I have. But as of right now, there really isn't anything. Maybe we'll kind of get something a little bit more in the new Loki show on Disney Plus, but at this point, I kind of doubt it, considering how much
Loki
we've seen of
is.
Loki
I
over the
remember when I
years.
started watching The Flash, and I was telling my sister, I'm like, I just think with DC villains versus Marvel villains, DC villains seem to be a lot more like ridiculous. And I don't mean that necessarily as an insult. I mean that just like they are a little more they're more ridiculous. They're louder, they're obscure.
They're a lot more Saturday morning
Yes,
cartoon. I'll get
whereas
you next
and my
time.
sister's like, "Well, I mean, well cuz Marvel, I mean, Loki's just so adorable that you can't take him seriously." And Loki is I feel like he's what I would call on if he was a character on Once Upon a Time, he is the villain in the half and how the seasons are divided up into decent villain or complainy villain. Like I understand why they're doing all this, but they're just it just seems like they're whining and complaining and it's like just like it doesn't come off like intimidating, it just comes off as annoying. And he I feel like is a decent version of that. Like I understand he feels that he is but Odin makes it clear, no, I didn't tell you because we love you. Like, you're our son. Like, he definitely feels second best to Thor, whether or not it was his
Oh yeah,
parents' doing. And he also, like, then he finds out the truth about himself. And this part I did find really weird. Or kind of lame when he wants Odin to tell him the truth. And then he's just so angry he yells at him. And then Odin just, like, falls. And I'm like, really? Like
yeah.
if it was like he accidentally used power on him or something, but like he just fell.
I think it was just like this strain and like the guilt
Oh,
on
okay.
Odin of like having just banished Thor and then having to confront Loki about his actual lineage kind of just became too much for him. That's how
Oh,
I
okay.
interpreted that scene, but it is also kind of weird that like Loki's kind of like the favorite DC villain, um,
Yeah.
because I mean it is interesting because I did point this out, I believe in like our Iron Man video, um, of the best villains in a story don't view themselves as villains. They think that they, to their core, are
Yes.
fundamentally right. And his main goal is to, he genuinely thinks that like the world, like I'm kind of pulling the example from the Avengers, is that he genuinely thinks that he will do a better job of protecting Earth by subjugating and ruling over it. He thinks that under his rule, Earth will prosper and they won't have war. He'll limit their freedom so that way they won't be so prone to the violence that Thor in his younger years was prone to, of them just constantly fighting with every minor inconvenience and problem that they had, like the Frost Giants. I mean, granted, Loki was the one who got that wheel turning,
Yeah.
but still, it was it was his way of proving that, like, hey, Thor, it's like it. In all fairness, Loki did very little to push him. He Thor was ready to jump the gun at any point. He just got like a little bit of like words of encouragement. It's like, hey, if you're fighting, I'll fight
Yeah.
with you. Let's go. Um, it, it he genuinely just thinks that he would be a better ruler than just some oaf that thinks with his fist before his brain, and that makes him a very interesting villain. And he is also a very tragic backstory of my entire life has been a lie. I'm not who I've been told I am. I'm not even the same
Yeah.
species of my family, if I can even call them that now. So that makes him also kind of sympathetic and a little deserve a little pity because of that. Whereas you got someone like Red Skull who is like, sup, I'm a Nazi. I'm such an evil Nazi that I kill other Nazis that don't work for me, and I'm gonna blow up the entire planet so I can rule it. It's like, okay, yeah, you have like no redeeming
It's
qualities
like yeah,
whatsoever.
I agree. There's the villains that I agree. Like there's either a villain that has no redeeming qualities but they're like really enjoyable to watch or read or whatever. And then there are the ones that,
Yeah.
because as an audience, we always want to relate, like, and Loki is relatable. Does he do things that you shouldn't do? Yeah, but like, I think it's just kind of, it does bother me a little that he definitely feels second best, but like his dad's like, no, we love you. It's just, and it's maybe, yeah, maybe subconsciously Odin Ness didn't necessarily want Loki on the throne because of the frost, because he is a frost giant and Thor is his actual biological son. But you know, I believe, I
Yeah.
can totally believe that, but I I don't know. It just, it seems Loki's storyline is, over the course of the story, it makes sense, but it is in terms of the information he found out and how he processes it. It all does seem happen. It does seem to happen a little quick, but not like abnormally quick. Like it does spread out over the course of the movie. But also this isn't his movie. It's about Thor, so that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it is also just kind of like just bad parenting on part of Odin, of like at least not telling him, kind of getting like Loki's hopes up of like one day like you can be on the throne. Of like, why would you even tell him that if you have no intention of putting him on the throne whatsoever? You have gotten his
Yeah.
hopes up for years, saying that like, yeah, you can be up there when like you know damn well you're gonna put Thor up there, even though he's technically not even your firstborn. And
Oh,
yeah,
right.
because we got Hela for
Oh,
that.
well,
You kind of buried her.
yeah,
Yeah,
that wasn't the wrong choice. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it wasn't the
yeah.
wrong choice, but I feel like there could have been like you could have at least told your son and adopted son that, hey, you got a sister, she's crazy, rather than like her just showing up in the beginning of Ragnarok is like, who are you? It's like, I'm your sister. It's like,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
what?
Yeah. Um just
That's like,
move, all
oh
right,
well.
moving on. Um I wanted, so Thor, I was thinking, I is Chris Hemsworth, it looks like there are some parts of the movie where he's wearing a wig and other times where it looks just like his hair. And I never noticed before, even his eyebrows are dyed blonde,
Yeah, his eyebrows are dyed blonde, which I think they
which
changed
was the
after
right
like every
call.
movie since then. So it makes watching this,
It's because
yes,
they're
it's
trying to,
just
he is
really
supposed to look
weird.
like kind of like that cartoon
Um,
esque version of a god with that. It is the correct look. It just looks weird because
yeah,
even if you are blonde, they're not. It doesn't look right.
it
His
doesn't work
darker
for
eyebrows
him.
look way better. I never noticed that until
Yeah.
this movie, and I'm like, his
Um,
eyebrows are like
yeah,
the exact same color as his hair.
yeah, it is just kind of weird and a
Yeah.
little goofy looking. But yeah, no, it is just kind of funny seeing the general like wardrobe change, if you can even call it that. I guess that's more of a makeup change between the remaining movies, um, as well as like the general character development that he gets in this one, of just like how he's just kind of like brash and still acts like he's on
New
Asgard when he's in like
Mexico.
this.
It's
Is he
like
in like
New
New
Mexico,
Mexico
yeah.
or is he in Arizona? I
But
keep
yeah, that
forgetting. New Mexico. Okay.
this entire
Okay. I
the
was wrong
entire
then.
like okay, he gets he arrives on Earth and Natalie Portman and Kat Dennings accidentally hit him with their car. They
Gets
then
hit by
bring him to the
yeah.
hospital. He then has to be like sedated because he's, you know, beating everybody up. He then later escapes and they decide, okay, well, we're gonna go look for him because we need him, and they hit him with their car again. And then I just, the that diner scene is so great. The, oh, this is good, another, just smashes his mug, and then a few minutes later, Darcy's like, he doesn't even
Yeah.
bat an eye at this. She's like, this is going on Facebook. Holds up her phone, smile, and he just smiles like a little kid. and then we just move right along.
Yeah. And then he goes to a pet store. It's like, I need a horse. Like, we don't have any of that. Well, what do you have? Cats and dogs. Well, get me one of those a bit large enough
I
for
just
me to
love they're
ride on.
like,
It's like, what the heck?
this guy, that pet store owner, he's just trying to get by, and then some guy comes in demanding a horse or a giant fish or dog, I guess. Yeah, um,
Why not?
so later when his hammer arrives after him, and then there's like, that entire sequence of all these like truckers and like drunk guys like trying to pull the hammer out. And Stanley, but
and Stanley. You can't
but
forget about the
the
Stan the
part the
Man
first
Lee.
guy that comes to pull, he he's just driving, and it doesn't even look like he stumbles upon it. It looks like he knew exactly where he was going, and I'm like, how did you know where that was? Like, what possessed you to drive out here? It's one thing if he drove right past it and then like, huh, what's this? But he just drove like he was already headed to there, and that bothered me.
I'm sure it like crashed. I'm sure it just like crashed in like a rather like seemingly
Yeah,
like
okay, so somebody
common
see
area.
it
Like it's a
maybe.
small town where there's clearly like one street. There's only so many places where you can like sneak off and like have a beer without
Yeah,
your like wife knowing about it or something like that. And I'm sure like that was like something. And from what we've seen, it's like relatively
someone to
close to
see
the
it.
town, so it's not that unheard of for or that unbelievable for someone to have like noticed like, hey, I saw something fall from the sky the other day. I'm gonna go drive over there and investigate, and that's probably why he somehow stumbled upon it like with like pinpoint accuracy. I mean, like Agent Coulson like shows up and is like, hey, we found it, and like that whole thing. Which this was actually like one of my favorite things about Coulson is prior to this movie they were like promoting it with this short like this Marvel short of like Phil Coulson driving there, and like he fills up his car with gas at a gas station, and he goes in and he's like debating between like these like two packets of like, do I want the chocolate donuts or do I want the powdered donuts of like these like small like little hostess things, and he's like in the back of the convenience store, and these two guys come in and they're robbing the place, and he yeah they're robbing the place, and like Phil's just like, huh. He puts the donuts down and it's like, hey, do you want my wallet? It's like, yeah. Like, put the wallet on the counter. It's like, okay. I have a gun too. And they immediately like, wait, what? They turn and point his gun at him. It's like, oh yeah, no, like I got a gun in like my coat pocket. Do you want me to pull it out or do you want to pull it out? It's like, if they're just so confused by the fact that this man just admitted that he has a gun. It's like, you're not gonna use it on it. It's like, no. It's like, so I think one of them reaches into his coat. He like, like busts his wrist and like knocks him out, and then throws him at the other guy, and he like de-escalates the situation, knocks them both out, hands the shotgun to the lady, and then he buys both the packs of donuts. Like, and then as he's leaving, the lady's like, "Wait, what do I tell him? Just tell him that those Thai bow classes really
Coulson.
paid off for you." And then he just drives away. It's like, this is why we love you, Phil. This is why we love you. It's
Oh
like,
god.
we
And
love
this
you,
is
Phil.
also the 20-30 second introduction to Hawkeye in
Yeah,
this movie. It just seemed like that
yeah,
entire
yeah.
sequence was just like set
He's
up
in
to
it for
introduce
like
him.
one scene.
Like
It's like,
like it could have, I don't know, he could have, or I don't know, it seemed there
oh,
was so much,
100%.
he had so much action, and then just like him just up there, and then like, I'm starting to root for this guy. I did like that whole part. It just seemed like there's a lot of him, like him, his back to the camera, like they're not showing his face, because like we got the big reveal of it being Hawkeye, that we're not going to see him again for like 2 movies.
Yeah, we don't see him again until Avengers. Yeah, it is kind of funny. It's like I was like, get Barton, I need eyes on the sky, and he like runs. You see him like heading to the armory, and it's like there's like an assault rifle, there's a sniper, and then we see a bow, and you see him grab that, and it's like immediately when that happened, it's like, oh, is this Hawkeye? It's like we got another hero in the movie. like I
And
like like high school me like kind of was like freaking out and like geeking out. It's like, oh, I need to like research this guy a bit more because I don't remember
See,
Hawkeye
I
that
knew
much.
nothing about Hawkeye the first time I
Uh,
saw this, so it was just guy with bow.
all I knew is that all I knew is like, okay, he's not wearing purple. They changed his costume up a bit. Okay, I like that. It would have looked weird with the purple costume, especially since he works with Shield.
Yeah.
His costume is like traditionally like purple. He has like a letter H like mask, and he has like look it up. It almost looks like he has like scales on like his like uniform on like the top part of his suit, and then the rest just looks like normal like cloth, and it almost looks like he has like a purple loincloth over his pants. Um,
Interesting.
it's very weird, like almost medieval. Like I think it's supposed to be like chainmail, but it looks like scales. It's clearly supposed to be like some kind of armor. It just
Are we
looks
talking about
really
still talking about Hawkeye?
kind of scaly.
Because Thor has like
Hawkeye,
that
yeah,
similar kind of
yeah. It was
scale
just
S
yeah,
chainmail. So that's why I'm like, wait, yeah.
yeah, but it's not
I mean,
bright. Yeah,
no,
but it's
it's
not bright
not.
purple, which makes me think this like that. This looks like some kind of like did you skin a lizard for that? Like what the hell?
You know.
Yeah, it just looks kind of silly when it's not a
Right.
natural color like that. Um, I mean, with Thor, it's like it's just
Yeah,
metal.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just a silver metal. It's like okay, yeah, that's what that's supposed to look like. And then we got like this like flamboyantly purple like scale mail. I guess is what it would be. Which just looks kind of goofy. But oh well. I mean, I'm glad that they definitely updated both his costume and Thor's costume.
yeah.
Because I am kind of glad that they ditched the winged helmet.
Yeah, it
I
looked.
always
Yeah,
I always thought that looked kind of
it.
silly.
Yeah,
Like there's been a couple instances where it looks kind of badass, but like for the most part, it's like yeah, I can do
it
without.
looks kind of. Yeah, it looks ridiculous. It's. I mean, this is. It's just funny because this entire. We talked about this with Iron Man. This movie as well is just like the beginning of this entire major franchise, and so there's all these things that happen that are so different now. And so yeah, his winged helmet, I'm like, this looks and his like very blonde hair, like all of it just looks kind of ridiculous. And thank God it upgraded.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, it is kind of cool, but I am kind of glad that they stuck with Loki's like horned like antler helmet because that's very something like akin to the comics, and I always thought this like that was such like an iconic look for him in like the comics and like the TV shows and stuff that I saw him in, and it's like if they change that, like I was trying to like wrap my head around of like how do they update that to make it still seem like as iconic as it is, because it seems like whenever we see him he's like that's like his like main like armor. It's just so like
yeah.
you can't picture anyone else wearing that helmet
No,
is what
no,
I'm getting at.
especially that scene in Avengers. I mean, many scenes in Avengers, but that particular scene where he's trying to get everybody to
Yeah.
bow to him and he's wearing it. It's so
Oh yeah, yeah, in
that
Germany.
and there is
Yeah.
just like everything about that from like just everything about that sequence and especially with the helmet it's like it is a nice trademark for him. And yeah, I'm glad that that stayed. It's like they got rid of the weird stuff and they kept this is the this is good, this is great, and they just either made it better
Yeah.
or just it stayed the same. um I We should talk about Thor and Jane, because we talked about Jane, we talked about Thor, but we didn't really talk about them together. And yeah,
Yeah, they had some very I don't want to say forced chemistry, but it just felt like it was kind of
came out of nowhere. a little.
It kind of felt forced.
It
It really
e
did kind
mm,
of feel forced for the sake of this needs to happen, but it felt a lot more genuine in the Dark World.
oh, yes, exactly. And see, that's why I like Dark World, because I really like Jane and I do like them together. I do agree that up until the she does seem to kind of like have a crush on him when it's like it just seems like you don't really know him, and I mean he's hot but he's kind of weird. Like I like
Yeah. And you did hit him with a car twice,
I
so
did
he might sue you later.
I did love though that scene of I remember the first or like the second time I watched this, I think I felt like Thor didn't have it wasn't that he had poor character development. I just felt like it took a jump. Like he suddenly just became nice. And then I was watching it. Then when I was watching it this time, I'm like, oh, actually, nope, I was wrong. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not really. I think his progression of being kind of a jerk to being a much nicer person is it flows pretty well. But I do love the scene of when he and Jane are outside and he's like explaining to him and he's explained to her, I mean the
The
different
different,
realms.
yeah.
It's there is this like it's one of those that's one of those elements that I think makes this movie beautiful. Not just like even though that's not necessarily I mean it's visually appealing because they're next to a fire and like next to like this like beautiful open sky. Like that part's great, but there is that science slash like mystic element that just I think they do work well together in this movie.
Oh,
And yeah,
absolutely. It is a good uh baseline for the relationship. It does feel like in this movie, it just felt like it needed to happen because that's what's expected
yeah,
for like
yeah,
the audience.
yeah,
Um, but in general, I do feel like after a while, because he's only there for like less than a week, and they're already like, oh, like I love you. It's like, really? Like we
yeah,
got a whole movie of like of Tony and Pepper, and like they didn't that like nothing happened with them, and they've been together, they've known each other for years at this point, and that movie takes place over the course of a few months, and there's like a lot of like chemistry between the two of them, like whether intentional or
yeah,
non-intentional on their part. But it
yeah,
just felt like that makes more sense. And then there's like Captain America and Peggy is like, okay, yeah, no, this is a believable like scenario. Like there's been more time to develop their relationship. They're both professional and potentially romantic ones. Their feelings for each other have been more fleshed out. Whereas this one's like, hi, I've known you for 3 days. You hit me with a car once or twice, and I've broken a mug, and I'm wearing your ex's shirt. You want to make out? It's like, really?
yeah. I think I think it part of that I think is that we don't get a lot. We don't know a ton about Jane. We know what kind of person she is, and I think as a character, I think she's like a three-dimensional character, but we don't really know a ton about like we get through pieces like oh her dad and Stellan Skarsgård used to work together. But like
Yeah,
we
and
don't
she had like an
yeah.
ex that was like also a researcher or some kind of doctor. We don't really
Yeah.
get much information other than the fact that she still has his clothes.
And she clearly has a
Um,
type if they're the only stuff that fits him. Like
yeah, it's like I like muscly brainy type.
but
It's like I guess Thor falls in that category because he knows a bunch of stuff you don't. I guess that's the only qualification.
I think I just was
Just know
like
stuff that Jane
yeah.
doesn't.
I think I just because we know a little bit and we know kind of enough, but I think there is like that scene of him talking about like all the different realms and like he's from
I
Asgard and
love
all
that
that.
scene, by the way.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I love that scene. I cannot remember the names of the different realms that he goes
The
about because they all
yeah.
sound the same.
Earth, Asgard, frost giant place and yeah.
Yeah, we got Midgard, we got Asgard, we got
We
Helheim.
got Skarsgård.
They yeah, we got the realm of Skarsgård is bleeding through into all the other realms, though.
But I think we needed a scene of maybe her talking about, like, I mean, I get
Her past.
her past, her, like, she's she's clearly, like, really passionate about her work. And when Shield comes and takes her stuff, she's like, I built most of the equipment, and so she clearly has, like, so much passion for what she's doing. And I just kind of want to know, like, and it's not that it's necessarily sets it up, like, I don't really care that much. I just think, like, I don't need to know it necessarily. It's more that I think it would have been nice to have, like, we get a conversation of him talking about his world. Why not a little bit more? I mean, I get, because yeah, this is her world, but more of a conversation of
Yeah.
talking about, like, her work, why is it so important to her, maybe how she got into it. I think they do. I agree that it does seem a little forced. I think by the end, I kind of believe it, but in the beginning, it does seem a little like when he kisses her hand and she's like, "Oh my god!" Like, she's just like gushing. um, I think what we're missing is just a little bit more the balance of, okay, we know about him, what's up with her, and I think we're not
Yeah,
getting
we
it
we we, we
because she's the human and we're in the human world. That's
yeah, yeah, I feel like she's supposed to be like the catalyst for the audience of she needs to know what the audience knows, which at this point is nothing. So that means that all the exposition that Thor gives about Asgard won't seem as forced because he's explaining it to her as well as to the audience.
yeah,
So I feel like that's why she wasn't given like the backstory of her life, is because the audience is supposed to resonate with her and Darcy and Skarsgård uh, through learning about Asgard and all the general information that the movie's going to give to them so that the audience can process it. So they have like all those three characters so that way it'll resonate with at least the audience can resonate with at least one of them, or one two of them, or if not all of them. But they have that like kind of diverse group of like Darcy kind of being like the teenager, which would probably be like the primary audience, the older generation who like grew up in the comics like back in the day, which is Skarsgård, and then there's kind of like the in between, which is Jane of Natalie Portman, where like everyone else would kind of fall into. So like probably like the boomers would kind of like resonate with her or Skarsgård. Um, which I think is kind of like when you kind of think about it like that, kind of makes more sense on why they have these three widely different people of like widely different age brackets all working together in a cohesive unit, when the only like familiar relations that they have with each other is Skarsgård worked with Jane's
yeah.
dad at some point.
I mean,
Um,
that is
so yeah,
solid. Like, I appreciate them saying that. So it's like, how do they know each other? Okay, so it's like
yeah,
they're like family friend. Like, okay, like they. I'm not saying they do a, yeah, and I think you made a, I think you're on point. And I think it's they're all entertaining enough characters that I like watching them. It's just to make the relationship a little bit more realistic. We need a little bit more. But then again, I mean, we don't really get that necessarily from Pepper, but the movie's not necessarily pushing them together in Iron Man.
yeah, no, it's heavily implying,
Yeah.
and there's like enough time and energy has been developing their characters as well as their relationship and just personality. So it does seem a bit more fleshed out when there is that payoff in Iron Man 2 of them eventually getting together and moving forward with their relationship and all their ups and downs.
It's
Um,
hard. It's
but
really hard because because it's like I totally agree with everything we're saying, and how, like, there is that fine line of sometimes a character is written well enough that you don't need more from them, and then sometimes they're not written well and you need way more. And Jane is like, I again, like, I keep saying this, I think she's giving enough that it barely suffices. And, like,
Yeah, yeah, she's been given like the bare minimum in terms of like character development and uh just screen time to really develop her character, because the focus is primarily on it keeps bouncing back and forth between Thor and Loki, because this is just as much his story as it is Thor, because he is such a pivotal character in this movie and in like the other movies moving forward, because he's like one of like the few Marvel villains that shows up in more than one movie. Most of the Marvel villains either die or have like maybe like a cameo in another movie,
Yeah.
Thanos prior to this. Like Thanos has like the most like screen time of any villain in like the Marvel universe, because he's been in the most movies. Like he's been in like Infinity War, he's been in Avengers, he's been in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's been in Endgame, he's been in all of those, and then there's Loki, and then I guess Red Skull, and then everyone else is dead before the credits roll on their first movie.
Yeah. Um yeah, there isn't the only thing about in terms of growth, the only growth Jane has is kind of realizing like there is it because she's an astrophysicist. So basically what she thought or what she thinks she knows is way more complicated and you know she might learn it's there is magic and there is science and like it's more of like her awareness change, her horizons broaden. It's and yeah, the focus is more Thor.
Yeah,
Like he fully like changes from arrogant asshole to like decent person.
tell Lightning McQueen, ka-chow.
um yeah, so I think overall I do like this movie. Um I I think we both said that it is definitely out of all of them like it's not the best of the Thor movies. It's not bad.
Yeah,
It is definitely not a bad movie.
no,
Uh, it's just
yeah,
our we've talked about our minor
it's
issues.
it's a yeah yeah it's a good um origin story. It's a solid one, and this is back when like the the formula that like Marvel had set up was still kind of fluctuating. There wasn't really a formula set up, because the only movies that they had in their wheelhouse at this point was Iron Man, which again that was a solid movie, probably like one of the best ones that they made of in terms of Phase One, and then there was Incredible Hulk, which people kind of scatter on if it should even really count when it
Mm-hmm.
does. That is technically a part of the MCU, but no
Because
one
it's Edward
really
Norton, not
chalks it up because
Mark Ruffalo.
it's not Mark Ruffalo, which is also kind of weird. But I mean, it's not like we don't count Iron Man 1 because of the casting changes from uh oh my god, why am I blanking on his name, for War Machine,
Oh,
for Rhodey's
Terrence
character,
Howard and
Terrence
Terrence
Howard
Howard and
to John
yeah,
Cheadle.
Don Cheadle.
Yeah,
I
I
almost
don't
said
know
Tim
why.
Meadows for a second. I'm like, that's wrong.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, no.
That's a completely different person. Yeah. Anyway.
Tim Meadows. So yeah,
Um.
definitely give this one a watch if you haven't seen it yet, and if you haven't seen it yet, then why the hell are you listening to a podcast on it? Yeah, definitely a fun, good intro to a very popular character, and very fun characters for the rest of the MCU for on Loki's part, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of him in the new Disney show Loki, which should be coming out at some point. I don't remember when.
Winter Soldier and Falcon or Falcon and Winter Soldier is this month, right? Or actually, I think it's this week.
No, that's it's coming out on
Yeah, it's this week.
oh, it is this week. I thought it was coming out
It
on the 31st.
oh it oh when this I think it's the 17th. So when this airs, it would have been out for like a day. I think I thought it comes out the 17th.
It wouldn't.
I think.
No, it's either coming out on the 19th or
Hang
the
on.
31st. I could have sworn it was the
I
31st.
I swear I saw 17th.
I don't
Wait.
think it's coming out on St. Patrick's Day.
19th. It is the ninth. It is
Oh,
the 19th. It is
it's
Friday.
coming out on my
I don't.
birthday.
I swear I saw the 17th. but
Oh,
maybe okay,
I'm
that was
getting my
totally
dates
wrong.
mixed up with this. King Kong vs. Godzilla is coming out on the 31st. That's what I was. I'm really excited for that.
Yes, I can understand how you can confuse the two.
I they're both. I'm. It's been a long quarantine. Okay, don't judge me.
everything's everything's blurring together.
All pop culture is blurring together.
At
Uh,
this point, I'm not. I mean, I'm surprised the Rose family hasn't popped up on an episode of Star Wars Rebels. Like
I
everything's just blurring
I
together.
mean, how far into it are you?
I'm season 4. I'm like the beginning of season 4.
Okay, there's still time.
Okay.
All right.
Who knows
On
what's to happen?
I guess on that note, I'm Kevin Tracy.
I'm Samantha Tomlinson. Please like, subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and Stitcher,
Spotify.
wherever you get your Spotify. That's the other one. Like where, those places.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone. Stay safe in quarantine. Get vaccines when you can, and stay safe out there. Bye bye.